Anger is not an external force. It is not born in the mouths of those who insult you or the chaos of a world that doesn't bend to your will. Anger is a fire you light inside yourself, a fire you mistakenly believe was started by someone else. But who holds the match? Who fans the flame? We are so quick to point outward. They made me angry, we say. But the Stoics saw this as a profound illusion. No one can make you angry. What they can do is act. What you can do, and what you must take responsibility for, is how you interpret and react to that action. What is anger? Not a judgment that something wrong has been done? You convince yourself that an offense occurred, that harm was inflicted, that something unjust took place. But pause. How do you know that's true? What if the offense you see is simply a failure of your expectations? A person cuts you off in traffic. You feel your body tighten, your fists clench, the heat rising in your chest. But what's changed in the world? Nothing. The car moved. Your judgment transformed it into a violation. You added the story, you assigned the blame, you summoned the fire. The Stoics taught that events are objective. What disturbs us is not the thing itself, but our interpretation of it.
Yes.
An interpretation is always a choice.
Yes.
A powerful one is a man's worth diminished because he speaks harshly too. You, one Stoic might ask? Or is it your esteem that's too fragile? These are questions designed not to provoke guilt, but to wake you up. To remind you that your serenity is within reach, but only if you are willing to protect it. So let us ask, why do we get angry at all? We get angry because something inside us is unsettled, because we cling too tightly to how we believe things should be. And when the world refuses to comply, when people fail to behave according to our unwritten script, we erupt. But if the world is not obligated to follow your preferences, who is at fault? Them or your expectations? You probably felt it before, the moment after an outburst, when the anger fades and all that's left is regret. That sense of, why did I let that get to me? That whisper that says, you could have held your ground. That whisper is not weakness. That's wisdom knocking, softly, asking to be let in. The Stoic path is not about becoming cold or indifferent. It is about becoming unshakable. You don't suppress the emotion, you study it. You trace it to its root. You ask yourself, was the insult real, or was it my pride that was wounded? Did they truly harm me, or did I harm myself by reacting? We don't stop anger with willpower alone. We stop it with understanding. We recognize that most people act out of ignorance, not malice. That their rudeness is more a reflection of their own disorder than any meaningful attack on us. And suddenly, with this shift in perspective, the flame loses fuel. The fire dies out. What remains is stillness. Stillness more powerful than any retaliation, because in that stillness is strength. Not the loud strength of vengeance, but the quiet strength of self-command. And that strength, once cultivated, becomes a shield nothing can pierce. Anger often masquerades as power. It makes you feel alive, decisive, in control. But in truth, it is the moment you lose control that anger takes over. You don't rise in power when you lash out, you surrender it. Imagine a warrior, armored, sword drawn, but blindfolded, striking at shadows. That is what anger makes of you. A soldier flailing, unsure of the enemy, doing more harm than good. What does it profit a man to win the argument but lose his peace? There is a concept the Stoics emphasized relentlessly. Control what you can. Release what you can't. Simple, yes, but not easy. Because the hardest thing to control is not the outside world, but your internal reaction to it. You might think of anger as a visitor. It knocks, it shouts, it demands entry. But the choice to open the door is yours. Each time you yield, you train yourself to be reactive. You let the world dictate your inner condition. But when you pause, even just for a moment, you reclaim the gap between stimulus and response. And in that gap is your power. They called this prohairesis, the capacity for rational choice. It is the inner citadel, the last refuge the world cannot touch. Someone insults you? Let them. That says more about them than it ever could about you. You remain unmoved, not because you are passive, because you are principled. The Stoics didn't teach the suppression of emotion. They taught the transformation of it. Take the energy of anger and convert it into patience, into resolve, to clarity. Let's be honest, we all feel the urge. That sudden surge when someone wrongs you, when a situation seems unbearably unfair. But remember, the first burst of anger is natural. What you do next is where philosophy lives. Do you indulge it? Fan it. Use it as justification for cruelty or revenge. Or do you examine it, hold it up to the light, ask it what it wants from you, and whether its demands are just? The Stoics would say, you've been given reason. Use it. Do not hand yourself over to passions like a slave. Picture a man yelling in traffic, screams, bangs the wheel, curses the world. Does that make the cars move faster? Does it undo the event? No, it simply poisons him further. And now, the harm is doubled. First the inconvenience, then the self-inflicted suffering. You might think, but if I don't get angry, how will I stand up for myself? The Stoics would answer, you can act without rage. You can correct without wrath. You can be firm without fury. Because true strength doesn't come from erupting. It comes from not needing to. From seeing things clearly, responding. With intention and never letting chaos take you with it. You are not the puppet of circumstance. You are not the servant of emotion. You are a rational being, capable of calm even when the world is burning. The next time anger rises, don't resist it blindly. Examine it. Challenge it. Question its purpose. And in doing so, you will find that what once controlled you now stands exposed, powerless, harmless, and no longer welcome. Anger is expensive. It's not in dollars or possessions, but in what it takes. From your life, one moment of rage can undo years of peace. One outburst can fracture relationships, derail progress, and stain your character. And all for what? A fleeting illusion of control. We rarely regret the things we didn't say in anger. But how often do we replay the things we did say? The words that came like daggers, fast and sharp, and once thrown, could not be taken back. The truth is, anger is a poor guide and a terrible architect. It builds nothing of value. Tears down, the Stoics knew this. That's why they practiced premeditatio malorum, the mental rehearsal of adversity. They didn't just hope for peace, they prepared for storms. They asked, what if I am insulted today? What if I'm betrayed? What if something precious is taken from me? And they rehearsed their response not with fury, but with calm acceptance. When you expect the world to be chaotic, you stop being surprised when it is. When you prepare for the possibility of offense, you are less likely to be pulled apart by it. And in that space between offense and response, you gain clarity. The clarity to ask, is this moment worth my peace? Imagine a fire again. This time it's small. It flares inside you, but it hasn't spread. You notice it. You feel the heat. But instead of fueling it with attention and outrage, you smother it with reason. You remind yourself, this will pass. I will not be ruled by this moment. So many things that anger us are so small in the long view of time. A rude comment, a broken promise, a mistake. But when you zoom out, when you imagine yourself looking back on this day from your deathbed, will it matter? Will it even register? The wise see anger as a form of self-punishment. You drink poison hoping someone else will feel the pain. But all it does is cloud your mind, tighten your chest, and chain your freedom to someone else's behavior. Ask yourself, how many hours, how many nights, how many years have you lost to bitterness? How much of your life has been surrendered to the past? Two things you couldn't change but chose to relive. Anger pretends to be justice. It pretends to be strength. But when we follow its lead, we often abandon justice and betray strength. Because true justice is rooted in reason, true strength is silent, quiet, unmoved. If someone wrongs you, you can respond with principle. You can speak firmly, act decisively, and still carry no malice. You can say, This was not acceptable. Without saying, "I now hate you," you can set a boundary without setting fire to the relationship. This is not weakness. This is mastery. Think of the person you most admire, the one who never loses their temper, who remains composed, no matter what chaos surrounds them. You think they never feel anger? Of course they do. But they've trained themselves to see it for what it is, a test, not a command. The next time you feel it, the heat, the pressure, the urge to lash out, pause. Remind yourself, this feeling is mine. I do not have to obey it. I can choose another way. Because every time you do, you grow stronger, not louder, not harsher, but truly stronger in the only way that matters. What makes you angry reveals more about you than it does about the world. Anger is a mirror, one we often avoid because it shows us parts of ourselves we'd rather not see. When you are quick to rage at disrespect, ask yourself, is it truly about them, or is your pride too fragile? When a delay enrages you, is it the time lost, or your intolerance for imperfection? When a friend forgets to call, do you burn with disappointment because of them, or because of your unmet need to feel valued? The Stoics taught us to use emotion as a teacher, not to suppress it, but to learn from it. Each pang of anger is a message, an invitation to look inward, not outward, because the wise do not say, "Why is this happening to me?" They say, "Why does this disturb me?" They would ask, "Why does this word, this act, this person, why does it have so much power over me?" Attachment or fear, then there is your work. Not in changing the world, but in strengthening your soul. Anger often points to a lack of self-understanding. We are disturbed not because life is cruel, but because we have not yet trained ourselves to accept it as it is. We demand that others be perfect, that circumstances be fair, that reality obey our preferences. But none of these are within our control. So when they betray us, we rage, not at the world, but at the collapse of our illusion. The Stoics taught that we are disturbed not by things, but by our opinions of things. Change the opinion, and the disturbance fades. It's not about becoming numb, it's about becoming aware. Aware of how often we misinterpret events, how often we take offense where none was intended, how often we assume malice where there is only misunderstanding. Anger says, "I was wronged." But reason says, "Let me examine that claim. Was it a true injustice, or just discomfort? Was it a betrayal, or just imperfection? Was it cruelty, or just ignorance?" Most of what angers us is unworthy of the energy we give it. The more we investigate it, the more we realize the real work is not in changing the behavior of others. It's in changing the way we see. So let anger be your mirror. Let it reflect your fears, your wounds, your expectations, and then use it. Use it not to punish, but to grow. Because when anger becomes insight, it loses its poison. Transformation, you become free. At the heart of Stoicism is not the suppression of emotion, but the cultivation of inner stillness. A stillness so strong, so grounded, that nothing the world throws at you can shatter it. This stillness is not born from apathy. It is not disinterest in life. It is full engagement with life without being owned by it. You feel everything. You just don't let it consume you. The final victory over anger comes not through argument, not through force, but through the quiet mastery of self. You realize that nothing is worth sacrificing your peace. No insult, no betrayal, no loss. Not because those things don't hurt, but because your soul is not for sale. Your serenity is not a currency to be traded for petty victories. The Stoics would look upon the world's chaos and say, "This is not mine." A man screams in your face, that is his storm, not yours. A stranger mocks you online, that is his emptiness, not yours. A friend disappoints you, that is their journey, not your identity. You don't own their behavior, you own your response. Every time you refuse to take the bait, every time you breathe instead of react, you become the stillness. Not a person with calm, but a person who is calm. Not a person fighting anger, but a person free of anger's control. This is not detachment in the cold sense. This is profound presence. You see things clearly. You act wisely. You let go swiftly. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much about your mind to let others pollute it. Life will test you. People will offend you. Circumstances will bend your plans and challenge your patience. But when you anchor yourself in principle, when you make stillness your default, nothing can move you without your permission. You become unprovocable. Not because you're passive, but because you're powerful. So ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? The one who erupts over every slight, or the one who sees clearly, chooses wisely, and keeps their peace? That choice is yours. Always has been. You can't stop the world from provoking you, but you can stop yourself from being provoked. And in that power, you will never be angry again.